Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is a live Q&A live stream. This is episode 132 of How to Get Hired, and the topic of today is the salary question I call BS on bad answers like I'm under NDA. Let's talk about this today. Special shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members. Membership has its privileges. Also to my Patreons, my super thanks donors, and of course to you, my participants. Thank you for being here. If you are seeing my beautiful face this morning, you should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face, of the video feed. Get in the chat. If you are a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in there and ask questions. Let me know what's up with you. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with when it comes to job search and careers, and I will do my best to help you out. That's the whole point of this. Yes, and for some additional help, you can check out that course. A lot of people, viewers of this channel, have gotten that course and have gotten hired through it. So, but more about that later. Anyway, let's dive in. Yes. Okay. So the title, salary question, I call BS on bad answers. I'm under NDA. Let's talk about this. This is referring to in a job interview, or sometimes before a job interview, they ask you several standard questions, one of which is the salary question. And there's a couple of salary questions. One is, what are your salary expectations? Right? That's pretty popular. You can expect to be asked that. Another sort of variant of it is when they say, what is your current salary? Or what was your salary in your most recent role, right? They want to know what you were paid in your last job. That is another variant of it. Okay, they're not quite the same question, but they're related to salary. Now, here's a comment that I've received on this channel quite a lot. I've done a couple of videos on how to answer the question, what is your current salary? And just to recap, my recommendation that people say if they're asked that direct question, right, is to say, well, I have a personal policy of not disclosing that information because there are privacy issues, confidentiality issues. I'm sure you understand, right? So some variant of that is what I'd recommend people to say. And I get inundated with comments under my videos that say, well, you should just say, I'm under NDA. No, you shouldn't. No, that's a bad answer. Very bad answer. Let me explain. If you're thinking of saying that, here's a couple of things you need to know. First of all, very, very rarely does someone get their salary or their compensation put under NDA. Okay, that almost never happens, right? Your salary is not confidential, okay? The only times when your salary would be under some kind of NDA, non-disclosure agreement, the only time when that would happen is if you're in some exotic situation, like you've sued the company over salary and you and them have settled out of court, okay? They may pay you a compensation, but then they say you are not allowed to disclose this and you have to sign an agreement to that effect. The other time when you could conceivably be under an NDA for your salary would be if you were in the middle of some weird union dispute or union negotiation where it was resolved and part of the resolution was they paid you something and then you can't disclose it and you're under an agreement for that, right? That's pretty much it. I don't know of any other situation where anyone would be under an NDA for their salary. That does not happen. It's not a thing, okay? People can be under NDAs for many other things, like giving out trade secrets or, things like that. But not for compensation. So the problem is if you go to a job interview and you tell the recruiter or hiring manager, both of them, right? This applies to both of those roles, recruiters or hiring managers. and you say, oh, I'm under an NDA so I can't tell you my salary, what's going on in their head is they're first of all thinking, bullshit, right? That's crap. That never happens. That's not a thing. So I can now tell that you're lying to me, right? You're combative and you're lying to me. So that's what that signals. That's what goes on in their head when you say that. Okay, so saying I'm under an NDA, I can't disclose my salary, is not a good answer. Okay, so I get people like commenting on that almost on a daily basis, telling me that you should say this. No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. Okay, now don't take my word for this. Go out and verify this. Okay, go do your own research. How often does someone have an NDA for their compensation? Very rarely. So that's the deal. So that's what I would say to this. Okay, so what's better is, like I said, my recommended answer for this is if you go to a job interview and they say, what's your current salary? You say, well, I'm sorry, I have a personal policy of not disclosing my compensation because of privacy issues and confidentiality issues. I'm sure you understand. And this is true because you could even talk about things like, if they really press you, you could talk about things like identity theft and fraud and stuff. It all does come into play. But that's my preferred answer. You just don't want to tell them. No offense. You know what I mean? It's like somebody asking you in a job interview, what's your credit card number? It's like they're not entitled to that information. You could voluntarily disclose it if you wanted to, but they're not entitled to it, right? And just so everyone knows, the reality is what you do with somebody else, like a third party, is none of their business. It just isn't, right? They're not entitled to that. They're not entitled to it by law. And in terms of etiquette, protocol, or what's reasonable, they're not entitled to it either, right? The reason why recruiters ask this question is because certainly with younger people or less experienced job seekers, these techniques work. You get the job seeker giving them all kinds of information that they're not entitled to that doesn't help the job seeker. It helps them to outmaneuver the job seeker, right? In terms of, proposing compensation and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's what's going on. Hopefully that makes sense. As I said, I've gotten a lot of comments about this. That's not like talking about NDAs. That's not a good way to answer. So that's what I'll say. Okay, get in the chat. This is primarily a Q&A, so I'm just feeding off of your questions. Anything to do with the hiring process, careers, like where jobs are, how to discover them, how to apply for them, how to get them, right? The salary question in general, like when they ask you the big salary question, they say, what are your salary expectations, right? That is a different question. Okay, they are entitled to ask that. There's no issues with them asking that. Now, you need to have done your homework and be prepared to be asked this question, right? So, hopefully you know what to answer when they say that, right? If they say, what are your salary expectations? Hopefully everybody here knows that the way to handle that question is to avoid giving a number, because the moment you give a number, you're dead, like they have an advantage over you. The reason that they ask that question is because they honestly have no idea what you're worth. That's honestly why they ask that question. There isn't an absolute scale that says you are worth X. It's all relative. It's all based on different opinions, right? One company or one hiring manager can take a look at you and say, oh, I think this person is worth X. And then another company or hiring manager can take a look at you and say, well, I think they're worth, X plus 200, or whatever, right? Who's right? There is no right or wrong. It's all based on perceptions, right? Now, the only thing that is real here is that if you worked for company A, you would be able to generate a certain amount of money for company A. You'd be able to increase their bottom line by a certain amount, say like 1,000, right? Whereas if you worked for company B, because they can't really use your top skills or something, or use you in a more efficient way, you would only add, say, 100 to the bottom line of company B. You added 1,000 to the bottom line of company A, but you only added 100 to the bottom line of company B. And then maybe another company, they used you to just sweep the floors, regardless of your skills. They just said, go, I don't know, sweep the floor and go distribute food to everybody, like whatever. You add 1 to the bottom line. You know what I'm saying? So to company C, you would only be worth 1. To company B, you would be worth 100. To company A, you would be worth 1,000, because that's the effect you're having on these different employers, right? And so the appropriate compensation, you could argue, would change based on these 3 companies, these 3 scenarios, right? So what's your value, right? Are we going off like what value you're actually adding to the company, or are we going on your potential to add value? You know what I mean? Once again, you see, it gets very complicated. So there is no right or wrong answer, what your value is, right? So when you go to a job interview and they ask you, what are your salary expectations? Or they ask you, what's your previous salary? The reason they're asking that is because they want to see, get a ballpark number to see what your value is, because they honestly don't know. That's the thing. Have you ever heard the expression, you are what you can negotiate? Or words to that effect? That's very true. It's relative, right? So there you go. Get in the chat, ask me some questions. This is a Q&A. I'm only here to answer questions. So I've just been filling dead air and monologuing so far. So if you got a question, get in the chat. Let me know what it is, and I'll do my best to answer it. And that's what these are for. So let me know. In the meantime, while we're waiting for questions, I'll just say, check out this course. If you want to go deeper with me and learn how to get hired, learn how everything works, learn about the posted job market and what you do there, learn about the hidden job market where 80% of the jobs are, and learn what you do there, okay? Check out that course. There is a link in the description box, and I've also made videos that describe the course, so it's as transparent as possible. You can see how it works, what you get, and all of that. So those are both linked down below in the description box under this live stream. Check that out. All my advice, all in one place. There you go, my Get Hired course. Okay, there are 20 people here. Thank you for joining me today. Hopefully you're having a good Monday morning, or early Monday, wherever you are in the world. Superstar Bella. Superstar Bella wins the award for the first person in the chat today. Superstar Bella is asking me the thing that I've just said for the last 5 minutes. How do you answer the salary question? Okay, so I've already answered twice how to answer the question when they ask you, what is your current salary? Let's talk about the main question, the standard job interview question. What are your salary expectations? So you go down to a job interview and they ask you this question. Now, there's a long answer, and I'm going to start with, what if you get asked this on a form, okay? Like on a website, not in person, right? What's going on there? And actually, this applies to both cases. If you get asked this in an interview or on a form, why are they asking you this question? They're not asking this question so they can have a serious conversation with you about how much money it would take to satisfy you and all this. That's not what this question is about. They're asking this question to try and eliminate you. That's the entire reason why they're asking it. The only time that would change is after you've received a job offer, okay? So if you haven't got to the final stages and gotten a job offer, okay, but you get this question in any way, shape, or form, they're asking it to eliminate you, okay? The idea is that if you ask for too much money, they're going to not pursue investigating you anymore. They're going to look at another candidate. That's the idea. Okay. So that's why they're asking it. This is obvious, hopefully, when you get asked this on a website, because it's one of the questions that comes up like right in your face before you can even send in your application, right? And the purpose is because if you answer unfavorably to this question, they won't even send your application on. It ends right here. You're immediately eliminated, sudden death elimination. Okay? So on a web form, usually they doctor it so you can't write words, you can't give a range, you can only give a single number. Okay? That's the only way you could answer that question, right? Now, if that's the case, if you're doing this on a web form and you have to put a number, here's what you do. Okay? Usually at this point, you don't know a lot of critical information about the job. Oh, sure, you've read the job description. Great. You have their little blurb and their requirements. Okay, great. But key things, like for a start, what are the benefits? Is there a benefit package? That would be kind of important to know when they're asking you for how much cash you need. You know what I mean? You don't know the vacation situation. You don't know the hours. You don't know if you're required to do shift work, if it's weekends, is it remote work? Do you have a psychopath for a boss? That's going to require a bit of a premium there to work under those conditions. You don't know any of this stuff, right? But they're forcing you to give a number. So here's what you do. All those things you don't know about the job, imagine they're all best case scenario, okay? You have a fantastic benefit package, full medical, eye care, dental care, pension, stock options, whatever. You've got it all. 6 weeks vacation a year. You've got 10 sick days a year. There are tons of opportunities for advancement. Your boss is awesome. Your coworkers are going to be your best friends. Imagine everything is best case scenario, then fill in that number. It'll probably be a lower number now. They don't have to pay you that much to take this job because this job is awesome. Okay? That's how you answer the question. Don't put zero. A lot of times with these things, there's what's going on behind the scenes is they have an upper limit that if you ask for more than this limit, it sort of says nope, and it just it terminates your application, like it doesn't go any further. They also sometimes have a lower limit. So if you put zero or some unrealistic, non-serious amount, they say, okay, you're not answering seriously. You're trying to deflect or circumlocute the question. So no dice, and they eliminate you because of that, right? So put in, a somewhat reasonable amount, but it's very low, right? Because you're imagining that all the other aspects of the job are awesome, right? Now, if you learn later on that your assumptions about the benefits and the vacation and the, all that stuff was incorrect, you can always revise your number upwards, right? That's the idea, okay? Because now you're given additional information. Now you're going to revise your requirements, right? Based on this new information. There's nothing wrong with that. They're asking you for a number now. Okay, well, I know next to nothing now. I only know the job description, so here's what I know I would absolutely need, right? That's what you put. So that way you pass the question and you get considered seriously for the role, but you're then able to ask for something reasonable later on as they reveal more about what this job involves. Okay? So that's how you answer on a form. If you're answering it in an interview, okay, it's a little bit different because in an interview you can say something other than a number. You can give a range, you could say words instead of numbers, right? So the goal also is to not give a number, because the moment you give a number, you're kind of screwed. If they say what are your salary expectations, and you say like, oh, I need this much, either that number is too high and they eliminate you, or the number is low, in which case it's very hard later on to ask for something reasonable. They'll give you an offer for something very, very low. So it's not worth your effort to really entertain this, right? That's the problem. It's hard to sort of then ask later for more money when you said at the beginning that you'd be okay working for a small amount, right? So that's the problem with giving a number. So we don't want to give a number. So when they ask this question, the first thing you say is like, well, it's kind of too soon for me to really give you that. I don't know some major things that I would need to know about this job, like, for example, the benefit package. If I don't know any of that, I don't know vacation, I don't know anything. So it's too soon to say. I would need to find out more before I can give you an answer on that, right? Now, sometimes that'll work. They'll be like, okay, fair enough, and they'll move on. Great. The problem is a lot of times it doesn't work, and they ask you again. They say, yeah, okay, I get that, but we really need to know, what are your salary expectations? So you move on to sort of phase 2. You say, you throw the question back at them. You say, well, listen, this position was posted publicly through official channels. Therefore, it must have been all approved. Therefore, the salary range for this position must have been approved. So can I ask what it is? And sometimes they'll tell you. They'll say, well, our range is between this and this. And whatever they say, you say, works fine for me. There you go. That's how you answer. That's the second phase. Now, sometimes that'll work. But sometimes it doesn't. They press you again. They say, well, yeah, we can't tell you the range. We don't know what the range is. Like, as if you're going to believe that. We're hiring for a role, but we have no idea what it pays. It could be minimum wage. It could be $1 million a year. We don't know, but we're hiring for it. Yeah. Tell me if you've heard that one. So they'll play these games with you, but then they'll press you again. They say, we need to know your salary expectations. So that's when you go to phase 3, third and final phase. And that's where you give a wide range. You say, listen, look, at this point, I can't really give you a very defined thing. So somewhere between here and here would probably be okay. That's all I can say at this point. Now, those two numbers, the low number and the high number that you say, okay, they're not completely ridiculous. You don't say like somewhere between $10 and $1 million, somewhere in there would be fine. No, you say two numbers that are reasonable, that are realistic, but just like they're pushing it. Low end, like really pushing the low end and then really pushing the high end. You say, look, somewhere between here and here would be fine for me. That's all I can tell you at this point. And the idea of saying this is that, first of all, they can't eliminate you because you asked for too much money, because you gave a range that started pretty low, right? But it also allows you to then easily negotiate for more money later on if they're serious about you, if they give you an offer, right? Because you never committed to like a low amount of money. You said somewhere in here, and that range went pretty high. So, I'm not going back on anything. I'm maintaining the story I held from the get-go, which was, somewhere in this range, and I'm asking for something in that range. So that's the advantage of it. They can't eliminate you, and it doesn't prevent you from going higher later on if they are really interested in you. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. That's in a nutshell what I would recommend for how to answer this question, both on a form, like on a website or whatever, and in person. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Junkyard Cybertruck says, super great advice. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you to say so. You're a gentleman / lady. Ascendiary Pathfinder says, numbers given before an offer are just speculation. Exactly. Once an offer is given, then it's for real. Well, okay, real to a degree, in the sense that it doesn't matter. If a company won't disclose the salary range, that's on them. If they're cheap, won't go. Yeah, I got news for you. Pretty much every company behaves like that because every company cares about making money. In the same way that every shopper looks at the price of a product before they buy it and eliminates options simply based on the price, before they take a real good look at like that product, right? When you go to buy a car, if you've ever done that, do you consider all options? You go to like Rolls-Royce and Lamborghini and Porsche and look at the cars that cost more than a house. Do you do that? No, you eliminate those, not because you've considered them seriously. You look at them, you go, nope, that's not an option. It's totally out of the price range. Not even going to look there, right? And then you go to maybe like a Toyota or whatever, whatever car you buy. And then you look a lot more deeply. You look at, okay, does it have power steering? Does it have, I don't know. What are the luxuries that cars have these days? Automatic transmission? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like then you get into the details. It's exactly the same process, right? Companies generally behave the same way that all individuals do. They don't throw money away for nothing. They don't give out money for free, and they try to do some basic things to try and get a good deal, like just basic things to make sure you're not getting totally ripped off, So that's what these people are doing, right? And this is their kind of semi-retarded way of doing it, okay? So there you go. Now, if you get an offer and there's a number in the offer, like you're saying it's real, and I'm not beating up on you, Ascendiary Pathfinder. It's real in the sense that, okay, at least shows that they're somewhat serious about possibly hiring you. But, it doesn't mean it's real, because first of all, they can rescind an offer at any time, and you can simply walk away from it. Say, absolutely not, goodbye. Or absolutely not, here, this is what it would take, and try and make a counteroffer, right? So it gets more serious. It means that it means that you have a little bit of negotiating power because they see your value, right? That's the only thing it really means. Superstar Bella says, thank you. You're absolutely welcome, Superstar Bella. Hopefully that was useful. This is a live Q&A, so if anybody has questions, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here simply to answer questions. So get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about. If there's any job interview questions, or you're wondering about how to discover jobs, how to get jobs, where are the jobs? I'm going to do something that, just for the sheer hell of it, I hadn't planned on doing this, but I'm going to do something that I did a couple of videos ago. I'm just going to pull up everybody's favorite tool, ChatGPT, and I'm going to do it on the screen with you guys if I can get it to work. So there you go. So ask me some questions. Get in the chat. If I get no questions, I unfortunately have to talk about my courses, so you don't want that. So send me some questions and I'll do my best to help you out. Okay, so I have this. And if you've never used ChatGPT, what I'm doing is I'm trying to encourage everybody to check out some of these AI tools that we have. Are they the be-all, end-all? No, they're not. But they're damn useful for certain things. And you should take advantage of them. Okay? I like to use it for things when I say something and a lot of people think, oh, surely that can't be true. I call BS on that. That's not what I've been told, therefore it must be wrong, right? And I say, no, look, I'm backing it up with ChatGPT. Now that might carry some weight. It doesn't carry a ton of weight, but I'm trying to encourage you to go out and verify this stuff. This is stuff that pertains to you, and it's pretty big, so go and learn about it. Okay, Marius says, hi, what is the best way to use AI to prep for an interview? Okay, well, this is what I would say. Okay, prepping for an interview. Now, if you're new at this, if you're just starting out, you're maybe young, you're in your teens or 20s, whatever, you haven't done a lot of job interviews, and you just want to get a basic idea of what questions I'll be asked. You know what? Let's do this together. Let's do that. I'm going to use the voice interface on ChatGPT. Hopefully this works without screwing up my entire computer. Let's see. Okay, you guys can still hear me? Okay, great. let's try this again. Okay, so for a job interview, what can I expect? What questions will I probably be asked, and what will I be expected to do? Let's see what answer ChatGPT gives you. Okay, so if you're just starting out, maybe you could do something like this, and this would help. Okay, so let's see what it says. Okay, so it gives you an idea of like the structure of it. Okay. Most common questions. Okay, tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work here? Tell me about a time you faced a challenge. Describe the time you showed leadership. What's your greatest weakness? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Okay, so these are some of the common interview questions. So that's a common question. That's a common question. That's one of the biggest trick questions there is. This is a common question, okay? And this is a common question, although you can get it phrased in different ways. So they can ask you, instead of like, why do you want to work here? They could say, why should we hire you? Something like that, right? Basically, this is the strengths question, right? They're asking you about your strength. What can you bring? Why do you think we should pick you instead of somebody else, right? Okay. Okay, now the other two questions in between, these ones here, tell me about a time you did this and describe a time you did. Those are called behavioral questions. That's where you answer with a personalized story from your past, right? Okay, so behavioral questions are something that's common in a job interview. So you also need to know how to answer behavioral questions. So you've got about 10 standard job interview questions that are the common cliched questions you can always expect. And then on top of that, you're going to have to answer behavioral questions. You cannot prepare for those questions in the same way because there is an infinite number of those kind of questions. So you have to go about it differently. Okay, you can read the answer, but I'd encourage you to do this kind of thing. Okay, so what should you do? Research the company, all this, learn about the STAR format. Okay, so you can do basic things like this. So to Marius's question, you can probably do something like this would be like the starting point, right? You could get it to help you with individual questions. Now, I have tried this, okay? I've used this ChatGPT quite a lot, and it gives you sort of standard generic answers. You might want to go a bit above and beyond that, especially if you're not at the sort of entry level. If you're like a little bit above entry level, you might want to learn more sophisticated answers to a lot of these questions. Just saying. But that's how I would use it to prepare for an interview if I was just starting out. Now, you don't need to do any of that. You could do what anyone would do to prepare. You do 2 phases. Number 1 is you figure out what your answers are going to be to all the standard questions, and then the behavioral questions, and then memorize it. That's the first step. The second step is then to rehearse with somebody else. A lot of people skip that step, and then they end up not doing very well. Grab a friend or family member, like just anyone loafing around, get them to do this with you. Say, we're gonna role play here. You're gonna help me out. You're gonna pretend to be an interviewer, and you're gonna interview me. I'm gonna give you a list of questions, or you go on the internet, whatever, you write your own questions, and we're gonna do this like it's serious, and it's gonna be practice for me. And if it feels weird, that's good, because that's simulating how it's gonna feel when you do an actual job interview. You're gonna be on somebody else's turf, out of your comfort zone. You're going to be a bit nervous. You got people staring at you, but it's okay, because with a little bit of rehearsal, you can learn how to perform very well under those conditions. But this is how you do it. You practice with somebody else. So if you practice, like what I'd recommend is, say for 10 days. Okay, so that's Monday to Friday for 2 weeks, 10 days. Each day you do 3 to 4 practice interviews, mock interviews with a friend or family member, just different people. And that means you've done 30 to 40 mock interviews. You will feel so confident. You'll know your answers backwards and forwards. You won't be flustered by, getting nervous or anything like that. You'll be able to appear confident and appear like every answer you're giving is genuine, and not like a rehearsed kind of formula that you're giving. You know what I mean? So that's what I'd recommend you do. And AI can definitely be a part of that, especially when you're starting out. So hopefully that makes sense. Incendiary Pathfinder says, yes, but a car price is clearly disclosed. It's not what you're willing to pay. Guess you really? Have you ever bought a car? You've never gone down to a car dealership and realized that you have to do this idiotic process of haggling with a salesperson? You've never done that? So, incorrect. Sorry, Hacienda Pathfinder. And yeah, it is disclosed. Like, both are disclosed. The car price is disclosed. They'll have a sticker price. And for a posted job, usually they will have a posted salary range, or they'll be able to tell you a range, or there is a range, it's just they're not telling you about it. The range is there, it just they haven't disclosed it, right? Da is here, says, thank you, Bill. You're absolutely welcome. Marius says, is it a good idea to let it interview you? I've never done that. Sure, yeah, it knows basic answers. But once again, like, how a moment ago I was recommending you interview with multiple people, right? Like, that's the idea. To practice, you would interview with multiple people, right? That also applies to AI, like, to ChatGPT or Google Gemini or, whatever tool you use, Grok. You know what I'm saying? Like, it might have sort of an opinion, right? Which is great. Now, ChatGPT, what I do know about it is that something that's been built into it is for it to try and be agreeable, right? The company that makes ChatGPT, for example, OpenAI, they want people to use their product. So they want people to have a good experience using their product. So they make it very friendly, and it tends to agree with you. It doesn't just blindly agree with you no matter what you say, but it tends to try and agree with you whenever it can, right? And be very positive, because that gives people a good experience and they want to use it more, right? So the problem is, maybe when you use it to ask you questions and stuff, it'll say, oh, great answer, and it'll always look on the bright side, when maybe that is not necessarily the best attitude you should have if you're trying to refine your skills and your answers and do better, like improve, right? I'm just saying, like, that's consistent, all right? Is it a good idea to let it interview? I would say it's something you could try. There's nothing wrong in trying it. It will be able to teach you something. Whether that will be the only thing you need to do, I'm a bit more skeptical about. But it's not a bad idea to do this exercise with it, Okay, so we're in a job interview. Let's role play. And you asked me the question, tell me about yourself. And here's my answer. Well, I'm a fine, upstanding person, and I like talking to people. Is that a good answer? Let's just see what it says, It's charming, but no, that's not a good answer. Let's break down why, and I'll show you how to fix it. You see? So it's not a stupid idea. You could learn a lot from this thing, right? Okay. So it tells you what's wrong with yours, what they actually want, right? Who you are, what you're good at, where you are, you're here now, stuff like that. Okay. So it can give you an answer. Now, as I say, I think for somebody that's just starting out, this is a no-brainer. You would definitely do this, right? For more sophisticated people at slightly higher levels, I'm not convinced yet. It's very valuable, very useful, but it tends to give out sort of generic, average, middling kind of answers. Not bad, but not super, super sophisticated. That's AI. That's where AI is right now, by the way. If you're looking for a generic thing that's kind of meh, but pretty good, it'll give you that. If you're looking for something fantastic and original, it's got an edge to it, no. Not yet. Maybe in the future. Marius says every questions is a good question. No, it's every questions is a good questions, isn't it? LOL. LOL. Rolling on the floor, laughing my goddamn effing ass off. That kind of, whatever the acronym, right? Anyway, so hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that works for you. Did that give you the answer you were hoping for? Yeah, fantastic tool. I openly encourage people to use things like ChatGPT. It's a great sort of first level thing you can do. Easy first step to learning anything, right? So that includes like what I can expect in job interviews, like we just did, what I should answer for different job interview questions, right? It'll give you very generic answers and middle of the road answers with no edge, but they won't, they're not bad by a long shot. They're pretty good. So awesome. Okay, well there you go, Marius. Glad I could help you out. Get in the chat. There are 23 people here. I'm answering questions. That's what I'm here to do. So if you are a subscriber to my channel, get in the chat. You should be able to get in there and ask questions. What you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, what's up with you, what are you doing, and if you want to share. And I will try and do my best to respond and help you out. That's why I do these things. I apologize if my camera gets brighter and duller and brighter and darker. It's because it's a partly cloudy day outside. And you would think that, software like Streamlabs, which I'm using to do live streaming, you'd think it would have like an ability to auto, adjust the brightness, but it doesn't. That's what completely blows me away. One of these years, I'm going to get new streaming software that will be able to do that. In the meantime, check out my courses. If you are you're looking to get a job, you don't know how to get a job, you're struggling with that, you've been searching for a while and it's going nowhere, check out this course. That's all my advice in one place. We talk about the posted job market. We talk about the hidden job market. You know what I mean? That will help you. It's helped a lot of people. Link in the description. And I've also made videos that are like FAQ videos that explain how the course works, what it does, what you get. So it's as transparent as possible. So check out those. They're both linked in the description box under this live stream. And also, if you want to go above and beyond, if you're interested in maybe climbing the ladder and getting higher level jobs and furthering your career, check out this. This course is called Write Like a Professional. Yes, it's about writing, but it's mainly about communication skills, about how to respond in different situations, how to do it. What I did was everything I've learned in my career between going from a supervisor to a CEO, all the communication skills that I had to learn and tack on, I put them into that course. So that's what that course is. So that'll help you. As you climb the ladder, you have to tack on various things. You have to tack on things like people management skills or financial skills. But you also have to tack on communication skills. They make you a contender for higher level positions. They make you a serious candidate. Okay, without them, I don't care how developed your technical skills are, you will not be considered for those roles. Communication skills are a must. Above average communication skills are a must. And that's what this course teaches you. So if you're interested in that, check out that course. There are 21 people here. I'm just here filling dead air until I get questions. So get in the chat and let me know what's up with you. I'm going to finally adjust my brightness here a little bit. There we go. Hopefully that helps a bit. Okay. Right. Yeah, so I have another live stream today and I'm back on Wednesday. I used to live stream on Fridays. I am going to bring that back, maybe this week, maybe next week, but I'm going to bring that back. Same with talking about entrepreneurship and the other things that I talk about. Because I do like to talk about that stuff. Even if the audience for that stuff is a little bit smaller, I don't care. I still like talking about it. And I know it's helped quite a few people, so I am going to bring that back. Usually that's what we do in this time slot on Mondays. Yeah, so we covered the salary question. If you're looking for the answer to the salary question, we covered that at the very beginning. Short recap of that was I get a lot of comments on my channel, especially when I talk about the salary question, when they ask, what's your current salary? Have you ever gotten that question in a job interview? Right? That's pretty common. Now, some parts of the world, a few parts of the world, they're making that question illegal in the sense that you can't ask it, even though a lot of people still do, even in regions where it's illegal to ask it. But the vast majority of the world, it's not illegal. They can ask you that, and they do. And the problem is that they're not entitled to that information, right? What you did with someone else, with a third party, is none of their business. You can voluntarily disclose it if you wish, but they're not entitled to it, right? So they can't demand that you tell them any more than they can demand to know your credit card number, So imagine you went to a job interview and someone said, what is your credit card number? We need to know. How would you respond? It's that same response you give to the salary question. And my recommendation is to say, well, because of, I have a personal policy of not disclosing that information because of confidentiality and privacy issues. I'm sure you understand. That's just a great way to respond professionally, but basically say no. It's a hard no. And the follow-up thing is that, as I was saying before, a standard tactic for a lot of low-level recruiters is to then ask that question again. If they ask a question and you don't give the answer they're looking for, they ask it again, and a lot of rookies, a lot of young people will crack. And they'll think like, oh, I got to do better. And that answer wasn't good enough for them. And they then go off script and waffle a bit. And then that's when they really stumble, because now they're giving them all kinds of information that they shouldn't be doing because it's bad for them. Right? And all the recruiter had to do was ask the question twice. That's all they had to do to get you to answer it. Right? You put up some resistance, but then they ask you, say like, yeah, I understand that. But then they ask you again, right? So what you do then is, remember this. You give the same answer again with a smile on your face. They say, yeah, I understand that. But listen, we really need to know, what was your previous salary, right? What was it? What number? And you say, okay, listen, like I understand, that you really need this, but like I explained, unfortunately, I can't disclose that because of my personal policy, because privacy issues, confidentiality issues, these are real. I'm sure you understand. So unfortunately, I can't be of more help to you, and then you just shut up, right? That's all you have to say. You repeat the same answer, maybe not the exact same words verbatim, but you basically give the same answer again, and you have a smile on your face. You don't make it awkward. You don't make it uncomfortable, right? You diffuse it. That's something to practice when you're rehearsing for job interviews. Practice smiling. They ask you an awkward question, and you go, okay, sure. Yeah, well, and then you answer with a smile on your face. And that's actually demonstrating some high-level collaborative and interpersonal skills. You're able to diffuse a potentially awkward situation. So So there you go. That's how you answer that. If they ask you the same question twice, which is a tactic that is quite effective for them, you give the same answer. Again, you don't have to elaborate further. You don't have to go deeper. You don't have to give any ground. You just smile, give the same answer again, essentially, and then shut up when you're done. And you let them move on to the next question. That's how you do these things. I know about you, but I wish they had taught me this kind of stuff back when I was in like high school. I remember they would teach kids like, the basics of how to do a job interview. I remember getting that maybe like one day or something in all of high school. I remember, I think they could have spent a little more time on it. And when I see a lot of what young people are getting today, what they're being taught in school and when they're coming out into the job market, they really are unprepared. They really don't know what's going on. And I don't know, it's kind of a crime. I wish that people were better prepared. AKR is here. AKR says, "Hi, sir. What's the best way to respond in an interview in case of marketing business related positions like sell me this pen?" Okay, so I hate that question. Sell me this pen. It's such a cliche, an absolute cliche. Yeah, unless you're going for like a sales interview, you're probably not going to encounter this question. Like you said, sales, like just a business position. I mean, it's not generalized to business. Like if you're going for an accounting position or you're going for some kind of coordinator or general manager position, they're not going to ask you, sell me this pen. That's what you ask like sales trainees kind of thing. Anyway, if you don't know about this question, it's been popularized by movies like The Wolf of Wall Street. You guys seen that? I remember that was like a big thing, like 10 years ago, something like that. Anyway, basically this question, the trick to answering it is for the candidate who's asked the question. They need to ask the recruiter a bunch of questions. They sell the pen by learning about the customer and adapting how they position the pen to the tastes and needs of the customer. That's how that works. So a bad answer would be like, "Oh, this is a great pen. It's got 4 colors, and look, it isn't dry. It's there when you need it, and it's big, so you won't lose it." Like, no, that's a fail for that question. The way to answer the question, as I understand it, is to like ask the customer, "So, okay, what's your favorite movie, or what's your favorite pastime?" Something like that. And they say, "Oh, golf," something like that. You go, "Okay, yeah, well, this pen, I don't know if you realize this, but Tiger Woods loves these pens. This kind of traditional Bic 4-color pen, the kind that you used to get in the 50s, he loves these pens. This is the only kind of pen he'll ever use, And, yeah, and then there are a couple of variations. One is a variation where you just make up crap. You say like, "Oh, this exact pen, this was used by Tiger Woods," like that kind of thing. And then the person goes, "Oh," so you can end up selling them the pen for $100 or something like that. Or there's the variant where, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to just lie and make up like falsehoods to sell the pen. You have to like do it more realistically, right? I'm not sure, when they expect you to do the former, when they expect you to do the latter. I'm not sure. It's, as I said, this question is only asked when you're really like interviewing entry-level salespeople. You know what I'm saying? More experienced salespeople, they don't, to my understanding, they don't ask that question because it's so stupid. You would rely on your track record to speak for your value as a salesperson. You know what I mean? Right? Like you're saying, like, "Look, last year I did $1.4 million in sales volume, just personally." It's like, that's why you would hire me, not based on like my answer to sell me this pen. You know what I mean? But that's my understanding of that question. Let's do an experiment together, right? If you were here earlier, hopefully you understand what I'm doing here. I'm trying to encourage people to use AI tools. So let's try it out. Okay, so if I'm in a job interview and I'm up for a sales position or marketing position, and I get the question, sell me this pen, what is the best answer? Let's see. Okay. Yes, some of this pen. It's not only about the pen, it's how you think, what they're really testing. Can you ask questions to understand the customer, understand a need, understand urgency or a value, right? Best approach, ask then sell. So don't sell right away, show curiosity and control. You know, before I do, can I ask, how often do you use a pen? You know, like things like this, right? Identify the problem, look for a pain point. Now position the pen. This pen is your solution to your pain point, right? You know, and then that always works for sales, by the way. You know, when you just give it a try, right? That's, you know, where that's useful, by the way. I know nobody probably cares about this here, but it's like if you're a new young upstart company and you're trying to get, you know, institutional customers and that traditionally go to your established competitor and you want to just get your foot in the door, you can do like a free sort of offer where they practically pay nothing, but you say, listen, come on, we're new, just give us a chance and you won't regret it. You know, that's very persuasive, right? And they'll give anyone a chance once. The problem is the challenge is being able to get them to come back to you over and over again, right? So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. So that's where you can look up some basic answers. This is a basic question. You can look up basic answers for that and do that kind of thing. I didn't come up through sales. I came up through operations. So, you know, personal selling is not really my background. But hopefully that answers your question. So that was from AKR. So there are 31 people here. Get in the chat. I am just sitting around waiting for your questions. I do these things so I can help people out. I answer questions, so send me a question. If I don't get any questions, I have no choice but to eventually sign off. But I'd like to. What's important to you? What are you wondering? What are you struggling with? Let me know, and we'll get into it. You're absolutely welcome. Yeah, so once again, if you are confused about how to get hired, if you are between jobs and you're having a problem trying to find a position, find a job, you know, I have these live streams, of course, and if you want to go deeper with me, check out that course. This has helped a lot of people. That's where I put all my advice all in one place that can answer many questions for you to do with the discovery of jobs, like where are the good jobs and how do you put yourself forward for them, and then how do you get them, right? So if that's what you're looking to learn, check out that course. Custom Code is here. Custom Code says, what's one mistake you see candidates make during interviews that cost them the job, especially related to communications or teamwork? Okay, well, the number one mistake that candidates make during the job is their attitude, okay? They don't realize that what's more important than getting the answers correct all the time is your attitude, right? So if you come in there and you sit down and you're looking upset, or you look like really nervous, you know, this kind of thing, it's like you already look like you're not the person they're going to hire before you've even opened your mouth. You know, how you answer the question. You can get all the answers right, but get rejected outright simply because they don't want to work with you. You know, likability is the single biggest thing that they're looking for, especially the hiring manager. The hiring manager is going to be your boss if you get hired, okay? Like that's who they are. That's who the hiring manager is. The recruiter you will never see again. They just come in to help with placing a candidate and then they leave, right? But if you get hired, you probably won't have anything to do with them anymore, but you will see the hiring manager every day, most likely. They will be your boss. So the boss is thinking like, I'm talking to many candidates. I could hire any of them. Which one would I prefer to hire? And a big part of that is, which person do I most want to work with? You know? So likability and having a rapport with people is very important. So the biggest mistake that a lot of, especially younger people or less experienced people make when they go to job interviews is they don't realize, they don't place the importance on that they should, right? You know, you should come in and you should try and be personable, even in the face of people that really, quite frankly, they're not that personable themselves. They might not be super professional. They might be almost borderline rude, you know, but, you know, I hate to say it. It's like if you sort of get all offended and, you know, act like, you know, this job is totally beneath you. And, you know, it doesn't matter what you say from that point on. They're not going to hire you because your attitude has disqualified you. So rapport and likability are number one. It's stupid, but it's true. So place the importance on that it deserves simply to prevent yourself from being held back. Okay, that's what I would say. Lori Fletcher says, what time do you host these calls on Mondays? Well, normally I don't do this type of live stream on a Monday. Traditionally, I would talk about entrepreneurship in this slot. I'm usually live Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I recently took 2 weeks off, so I'm just coming back from that. So I haven't restarted the Friday ones yet. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this time, like right now for me, it's 1 p.m. Okay, so I don't know where in the world you are, but for me, it's 1 p.m. on a Monday. I start at noon on a Monday, where I am, Central Time in North America. And I go more or less until 3 or 4 in the afternoon on a Monday. Assuming there's people that have questions that, like you guys that are showing up and asking me questions. If nobody asks me any questions, then I sign off pretty quick. But hopefully that makes sense. Thank you for asking. Superstar Bella says, I have a higher view taped interview. What are some pointers you can give to make it the next round of interviews? I've heard of higher view. I assume it's one of those cheap ass basic things that automates interviews at the low end. Usually they're like, I'm not trying to get you down or anything, but usually you go through them to get the crappy jobs, the low level jobs that, you know, are publicly posted, which are not very desirable. You know, I don't know how higher view works specifically. I don't really care. You know, all I would say is there's not really any magic. In order to learn how to pass a job interview, you got to do a couple of things. And I covered these earlier. Phase 1 is to learn the standard answers to the standard job interview questions. There's about 10 of these. Things like, tell me about yourself. Things like, what are your salary expectations? Things like, why should we hire you? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, like there's about 10 of those, right? And then you need to learn how to respond to behavioral interview questions. Those are the questions that start with, tell me about a time this happened. Tell me about a time that happened. You're answering with a personal story. The way you go about answering and rehearsing for those is completely different. There's an infinite number of behavioral questions that they could ask. There's no way to like prepare for them all. You know, you have to learn what the formula is and then learn how to adapt it. Okay. Then, you know, like higher view, I think like that's something where you're on the internet, right? But so maybe it doesn't apply, but the phase 2 of preparation is then rehearsing with someone. You need to rehearse with somebody. You just do. I don't care how much of an introvert you are. I don't care how much you're socially isolated. You need to interview with somebody, you know? Otherwise, you will go down to your job interviews and you will make all the rookie mistakes live in a real interview and blow the interview and blow the job. You know what I mean? It's much better for you if you make all those same rookie mistakes practicing with someone else and not like in the actual thing where you lose the job, right? Okay, so you can have it your way. Like either you put time into this and rehearse with somebody, a friend or a family member, or you make all your mistakes in actual job interviews where you lose a job. And that's how you learn not to do that, right? You know what I'm saying? So those are the two phases of how to prepare. Pretty simple. I can help you with the first one. And if you're really, really hard up for like doing the second one, you know nobody and you hate everyone, maybe, I don't know. You could even get like a career coach to help you with that. You know, I work with a career coach. We do collaborations on my channel every couple of weeks. Her name is Abby from the YouTube channel Life Work Balance. So you could check her channel out. She provides career coaching where she works one-on-one with people. There are a lot of others, you know, but I would do it with a friend or family member simply because you could do it over and over and over again for free, you know? So that will prepare you. For an interview on the internet, maybe you could get away with not preparing for with other people, but I don't know, do they put you under a time limit in higher view? That might need you to have been rehearsed. You know what I'm saying? Hello to Helicopter. Helicopter is here. I'm going to adjust my camera here. There's no need to be afraid. I'm just adjusting my camera. Okay, don't be alarmed if you find any of this alarming in any way. Okay? The thing is to not go to pieces, you know? So if you are just agog at how handsome I am appearing on your screen, don't be alarmed, don't be afraid, just take a deep breath. You'll soon acclimatize. Roderick is here. Roderick says, good day. Well, good day, right? If I had a hat with a big feather on it, I would doff it to you. Good day. I was asked about the salary and responded with a wide range, 100 to 150. I added that since they see me fitting on the senior role, it would be the higher end of the range. Okay, that's maybe not what we want to do. I am waiting on the follow-up interview at the moment. Okay, well, best of luck to you, Roderick. I hope they call you back. Now, a word of advice, Roderick. If you're waiting for their response, okay, when you say waiting, hopefully that doesn't mean that you have stopped looking, okay? What you need to do now is you need to pretend that interview never occurred, and you need to proceed full speed ahead with with finding and pursuing as many job opportunities as you can, okay? If these people call you back, great. I hope they do. But don't just pause and sit by the phone waiting for it to ring, proverbially, okay? You need to keep moving forward, okay? You may never hear back from these people, like worst case scenario. You know what I mean? So don't let it hold you back. You know what I'm saying? Keep moving full speed ahead. And the thing is, look at it this way. Even if they do call you back, wouldn't it be great if when they interviewed you again or gave you an offer, whatever comes next, you also had other irons in the fire? You were interviewing with other companies, or maybe even had received a job offer from another company. You have that in your back pocket while you're talking to these people. Wouldn't that be even better? Now you can actually negotiate. You have power to negotiate, you know? So always move forward, okay? That's how you handle it. Don't let any of these people prevent you from moving forward full speed during your job search campaign. Matty says, I did hire view for BAE, whatever that is. There are questions and you have to record yourself. I find it boring. Oh, it's one of those. Oh, I hate you see, they're trying to push for that to be the new normal. And I think that it's being wholeheartedly rejected by job seekers, because the reason they do it is so that, you know, the way job interviews work is they usually can tell within the first couple of minutes whether they're going to hire you or not. Like, it's kind of fuzzy, you know, there's always exceptions, but for a lot of people, that's how it goes. A lot of interviews, that's how it goes. Within the first couple of minutes, they know. They have a vibe. No, you know. So with things like HireVue, if you've recorded like answers to all these questions, it's like videos of you, They watch the first one, they make a decision, they don't watch the rest, if it's a no. So it makes their job more efficient at your expense. You still have to do all the work, and maybe it's even more work and it's more stressful, right? But it's more efficient from them. It's totally self-serving, and you know what I'm saying? There are so much better ways of getting a job than dealing with crap like this. Learn what those are, okay? I'll just do one thing. I promise I won't like beat you guys over the head with this again, but here. Okay, so ChatGPT, what's the percentage of jobs that are out there that I could get that are posted? That's maybe not a great way of phrasing it, but let's see what it says. Okay, so here you go. So of all the jobs that you see posted, it's actually more like 20% or less. What you're seeing is all those jobs, that's 20% of the jobs that are out there, okay? Now the others, the other 80%, they're out there and you could get them. You could put yourself up for them. The thing is you discover them a different way, okay? So if this is news to you, if this is like a new thing, okay, I'm here to tell you, learn all you can about this, okay? It's called the hidden job market. That's where all the good jobs are, and that's where all these jobs are that, have substantially less competition for them, right? Because something like 80% of all the job seekers are all competing with each other for the 20% that are posted, right? And they're ignoring the other 80 because they aren't aware of them or they don't know how to go about doing it. So before you check out things like HireVue or those silly things that require you to record all your answers into a camera on a website and all this stupidity, there are so much more promising things you could be doing. Okay, so I'm not going to beat you over the head with it here. I know a lot of people, they challenge this because they've never heard of it, but they think surely that can't be true. I call BS on that. Well, look, that's one of the reasons I'm trotting out things like ChatGPT. Don't take my word for it. Go do your own research on it. Okay, that's where you should be looking. That's where the good jobs are. And that's where instead of competing with 800 people for a job, you're competing with like 2 for a job, It's also, as an added bonus, it's also a much more positive experience when you put yourself forward for these. You don't have to deal with idiot, rude, unprofessional recruiters. It feels like a referral, So anyway, I won't say any more. Check it out. If you want to explore that stuff with me, check out that course, okay? Link in the description. All my advice is all in one place right here. If that's what you're looking for, that's where it is. That course has helped many people. Okay, where did we leave off here? Superstar Bella says, thank you, Superstar Bella. And same to you. I wish you the best. Maddie says, in your opinion also, are internship jobs or not even part-time and it's a few months? I don't know what that means. What are you asking? Internships are definitely good. You should go after those. Part-time jobs is definitely doing. You should go after those. Even if it's a few months, yes, you should definitely do that. I mean, if that's what you're looking for and that makes sense for you, of course, there's nothing wrong with doing those. How I would go about it would not be through things like HireVue. I would go and talk to the person and do it properly, right? But learn about that. That's how you get jobs, Superstar Bella is talking to Maddie. Custom Code says, I was once asked in an interview, tell me about a time you failed. I think I messed up the answer. How should someone answer that question the right way? Okay, so there's 2 kind of parts to this. One of the standard job interview questions that they always ask in one way, shape, or form is, what are your weaknesses? Or what is your weakness? Some variant of that, okay? That's the king of the trick questions, right? Normally the way it works is, if you ask a recruiter, How should I answer that question? This is what they'll say. They'll say, oh, you should be honest and admit when you failed and what your weaknesses are. All we want to know, they got a big smile on their face, they're wearing that mask. All we want to know is that you're working on yourself. We just want to know that, just so that you're self-aware and you realize that you're not a god and, you have limits and weaknesses and you're working to improve yourself. That's all we want to know, right? Ding, like the smile, right? BS. It's totally self-serving. What actually ends up happening in the vast majority of situations in the real world, in actual job interviews, is that they say, tell me about a time you failed, or like, what are your weaknesses? And you say, where do I start? Here's a weakness of mine. I'm an alcoholic. Here's another weakness of mine. I get very violent when people tell me I'm wrong. And that's happened a few times on the job, right? And they say, thank you for being, so open and disclosing this freely. It's really refreshing to hear a candidate who just can level with you, and then they eliminate you because of the thing you said, right? You walked right into an ambush, right? So it's a very lazy way to run a job search campaign. You're talking to X many people. You've got to eliminate all but one. Well, let's ask this question. If we could eliminate you, why would we eliminate you? And you say, if you eliminated me, it would probably be because you discovered that, I don't understand the concept of appropriate conduct in the workplace. I've never understood that. I mean, if I want to walk around with no pants, hey, it's a free country. I can walk around with no pants. You can't tell me I don't have the right to do that wherever I feel like it, right? And they go, well, thank you. It's great that, you're so candid about disclosing that, right? And then they eliminate you, right? You know what I mean? I'm obviously picking some obviously stupid examples, but hopefully you get the point, right? Now, the question you asked, tell me about a time you failed. First of all, that's a behavioral question. So they're not asking for like a concept. They're asking for a story. Tell me about a time you failed. It's a behavioral question. You're going to answer in some variant of the STAR format, right? STAR, situation, task, action, result, right? Okay. Now, this question eliminates a lot of rookies, a lot of young people who don't have a lot of experience with this. If you talk about a time where you failed for something like serious, you've just eliminated yourself, right? Well, there was this one time where, we were playing with explosives and, there was a label on the box and my boss told me, to be careful with this box, right? But one thing led to another and 5 people were dead, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter how eloquently you tell the story and how you talk about how you've worked on self-improvement. You've eliminated yourself, right? Hopefully that's a silly yet obvious example, right? So the key is to answer their question, but not give anything real that eliminates you, okay? So, I don't have a ready prepared example off the top of my head to answer that. But what you would do is you would think of a story from your past where you failed in some trivial way. You failed by some silly standard. Your boss wasn't happy about something, but they were an idiot. You know what I mean? Or something, you misheard something, or they didn't express themselves clearly, and you got mixed messages and you went ahead and did something, and that kind of thing, right? Now, I would not go to ChatGPT for this type of question because you need to tell a story from your past, and if you're just telling a generic story that you got off the internet or you heard from someone else, if they find out about that, that raises some serious red flags, okay? Because you're showing a lack of integrity. You're lying to them, essentially. You didn't fail like that. That's a canned story, right? But the thing is, you would tell a story where you failed. This is an interesting challenge, where you failed in a trivial way, right? So, for example, the other thing I would do is I would not use perfectionism, right? Because that's just a no-no. They know about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've heard that one before, right? What's your greatest weakness? Oh, I'm a perfectionist. It's like, yeah, BS. You would have to tell something that at least sounds real. Okay? So I would tell it like you answer the weakness question, where, how do you answer the weakness question, by the way? Let's cover that, because I think a lot of people are interested. They say, what is your weakness? Right? And this is the answer I'd recommend. Think of an aspect about yourself that's that's good, but there's a trade-off. Okay? For example, I'm very diligent. I do things very, very well. But what's the side effect of that? I'm not the fastest worker, right? You could do it the other way around. What's a great trait of you? Oh, I work fast. I don't like people that take forever to do something that could be done in like 2 minutes. I like to get things done. That's a great trait. Sometimes you really need those people to keep things moving, right? What's the unfortunate side effect? Oh, well, every once in a while, something isn't done perfectly, right? So that side effect, that's what you say is your weakness. Your weakness is a legitimate weakness. Occasionally I make mistakes, right? But it's presented as an understandable side effect of something you do that's awesome, right? Why is it that every once in a while I make a mistake? It's because I do 3 times the work volume of every other worker, I'm that much more productive. I believe in keeping things moving, right? So that's how you answer. You give that. But the icing on the cake is if at the end you say that you do something, you can say that you do something that directly neutralizes the weakness. What do you do that makes sure that that weakness never becomes a problem, right? So you could say, like, for example, occasionally I make a mistake. It's because I do such a high volume of work. Not everything is done perfectly 100% of the time. Occasionally, something is not done correctly, right? But what I do is I check in with my boss verbally at the end of the day, and I say, how is everything I've done? Have you noticed any issues that I need to fix? And sometimes the boss will say, well, that one actually wasn't done right. He's like, not a problem. I'll get on that and I'll do it right before I walk out the door. Just it takes a couple minutes. So that way, even the stuff I miss, it never ends up being a problem. I'm just making this up as I go along, but that's the formula, right? I give an understandable side effect of something I do that's awesome, and then I do this additional step at the end that makes sure that that weakness never ends up being a problem. And that way they can't eliminate you for the weakness. And you've also used the questions to tell them 2 awesome things that you do. 2, right? Why am I doing this? Who does that? 2 things, right? You don't do this. That means something else. 2 awesome things about you that you've snuck in there, right? So you would tell a story that illustrates this, okay? When they ask you that question. And it might be one of the stories that you prepare for answering behavioral interview questions. God, that was a long-winded answer. Hopefully that makes sense. BAE Systems is a British multinational arms, aerospace, and security company. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's why you shouldn't use acronyms when you talk to people in a sort of neutral context. I don't know that. There are a lot bigger companies than BAE, and I don't even know them either, internationally. Superstar Bella says, yes, it is basically, okay, we're talking to Superstar Bella. Guido says, do you think LinkedIn is still the best platform to build a network, to take advantage of the hidden job market? Yes. It's not quite as awesome as it used to be, ever since Microsoft bought it. That's kind of a pattern. When Microsoft buys things, they usually flush it straight down the toilet. That's usually what happens. LinkedIn has declined a bit, but it's still, unfortunately, number 1 of any other alternative platform for online building a network for business stuff. So yes, I still think so. Matty says, sorry, bad typing. I was asking if internships to you are real jobs. Well, by definition, internship, does it pay you? Like, I thought by definition, they don't really pay you full value, right? Because their value is mainly it's a non-monetary compensation. Like you get an internship, you get placed inside a company, right? You're probably still in school, right? So off the hop, why would this be useful to you? Well, number one, you've got career-related job experience. So when you come out of school, you've got career-related job experience, right? Number one, that's the big value. Number two, while you're inside the company, there's a lot of networking opportunities, right? For a start, if they were going to hire someone, if that company was going to hire someone as a permanent employee, they would come to you, they would look at you before they would look at like a pile of resumes on a desk, right? Because they've worked with you. They've seen what it's like working with you. They've seen the quality of your work and the quality of you as an employee, right? So assuming you didn't disappoint everybody, you're sort of first in line for when they're hiring for that company, right? Thirdly, while you're in the company, you have the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that are in that industry. Presumably that's the industry that you're interested in working in, because you've gone to school for that stuff and now you're working in that industry. Here's your big opportunity to talk to a lot of like bosses and managers and executives and all kinds of people that not only do they know everyone in that industry, but they can give you all kinds of like insider tips on, what values are highly regarded, what skills are highly regarded, how you learn skills. They could give you knowledge and tips directly, right? So that's a third advantage. Fourth advantage is they could even write you like referrals, letters of recommendation while you're there. Before you leave, you hit up your boss and your boss's boss and say, hey, I've worked here for like 3 months. Before I leave, would you see it appropriate to write me up a brief letter of recommendation if you feel you can do that? I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure it would carry a lot of weight, You know what I mean? Like, so you can leave with that saying, not only do I have industry experience, but here's like a letter of recommendation from my boss and their boss about how good I am. So there's a lot of things you can get from an internship that are other than the money they pay you, right? Its primary value is those other things, not necessarily the money they pay you as compensation, right? So internships are absolutely a good idea. You should pursue them if you can get them. And even if they don't pay you anything, you should still take it for those reasons, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, we've reached the end of the chat. Any last minute questions, please let me know. There are 31 people here. Thank you for joining me. I'm actually going to be back on this channel live in half an hour. I have another live stream starting. It's a little bit different than this one. It's called Honest HR Nitrous, if you've ever seen those before. That's where we talk about job search and careers, but from a slightly different angle. It's from the angle of, the gritty reality. Fake jobs, ghosting, rude recruiters, incompetent recruiters, the hidden job market, all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about that sort of thing. So for sure, come back and be a part of that if that's something you're into. While I'm waiting to see if there's any last questions, check out my courses. This is probably the main one most people would be interested in, my Get Hired course. Like I was talking about earlier, that's where I put all my advice all in one place. And in addition to talking about the posted job market and job interviews, I talk about the hidden job market, how you get jobs in the hidden job market. And like we established earlier, the hidden job market, that's where 80% of the jobs are that you could get. They're there, just that you discover them through other means than doing an internet search. You know what I mean? So that's also where, coincidentally, all the good jobs are. So if you've never heard of this or you are aware of it, but you don't know how to kind of break into it, check out that course. That'll help you with that. Also, check out this course here. Tack on some high-level communication skills. That'll help you in your career, be tremendously advantageous. It's not just about writing, it's about communication skills in general, how to conduct yourself, how to respond. So check that out. Everything that I learned from going from a supervisor when I started out to a CEO, where I ended up in my corporate career, everything I learned along that journey, I put into that course when it comes to communication skills. So that's what that is. So links in the description box under this live stream to access those. Kelvin says, so last year I interned at a company a year ago, and this year I interviewed for an entry-level role at the same company. They asked me what I did not like during my internship about this role. Okay. This is a great opportunity to talk about the trap interview question. Okay. Now there's a lot of I told everyone before, the purpose of a job interview in a big sense is to eliminate people. Okay. If you have one job, you start by getting applications. If you're posting it online, you can get hundreds of applications. You have to pick a subset of those to interview with. Usually, traditionally, it was like average of 6 people you would bring in for interviews, right? And you'd eliminate 5 and you'd keep the best one, and then you offer the job to that one. So it's an elimination game. At every step, you're whittling down the pool of candidates down to 1, right? So one of the things that recruiters are doing and hiring managers are doing is they're looking for reasons to eliminate people. It's not the only thing they do. They also look for like points of value and stuff. But one thing they are actively trying to do is they're trying to look for red flags. They're trying to surface red flags so that they can eliminate you based on the red flags. This question is a classic example of that. They say, what didn't you like about working for us? Right? And you say, where do I start? I mean, this was a terrible company. I had a terrible time here, to be honest. The only reason I'm here is just because I need money, but man, the boss was an idiot. The work was stupid. Everything was totally inefficient. The morale here was terrible, right? Obviously, if you answer this, you've eliminated yourself, right? But they're happy they ask you this question because it surfaced this, right? So this is what they're fishing for, okay? It's like an ambush. If you give them the thing that they literally just asked for, you eliminate yourself. Introverts love this. Technical people love this. They love this, arrangement. So the way to answer questions like this is to wriggle out of it. You say, well, actually, nothing really stands out that I didn't like. I thought it was fine. I thought some things were really cool. But there was no part of the role or my experience working here that I did not like. I think it was all a really cool experience for me. I learned quite a bit. Now you go into the strengths. I learned quite a bit. I saw a hell of a lot that was really interesting to me. How what I do fits into a larger sort of machine. It was really cool seeing that. I got to work with some great people. I was kind of encouraged by how helpful some of the people were, and my boss was pretty good too, so there wasn't really any part that stands out to me that I didn't like. I had a pretty good time, you know what I'm saying? That's how you answer the question. You wriggle out of the trap, right? And they go, oh, okay. Not bad. Now, if they want to really play hardball, like we've talked about twice so far in this stream, and, to put the screws to you, they do that amateur technique where they ask you the question again. They say, yeah, that I understand. That's not really an answer though, but, so I want to ask you, I need to know, what didn't you like about it? There must have been something you didn't like. You see? So they're asking you again. Hopefully everybody knows what I said before. What do you do when they do that? Do you go back and think oh, my answer wasn't good enough. I have to do better. I have to give them something else. No, you give your answer again. You say, well, no, sorry. Like I said, my boss was pretty good. The coworkers were pretty good. The work I did was interesting. I got to apply what I knew. Seeing the larger operation was really cool. And no, there wasn't really anything that I would say I didn't like about it. I thought it was a really great experience. So you wriggled out of it again, and you have a smile on your face when you're saying it. Right? That's how you pass that question with flying colors. So that's for Kelvin. Maddie says, I dislike insane multiple round job applications. Your opinion? Like, you have to send in more than one application? Is that what you're talking about? I haven't even heard of that. Like where you apply for the job and they get back to you and they say, okay, please send us this. Write a personal essay or, send us a cover letter. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, that's stupid. Like if a company did that, I would suspect that it's a large organization, right? There are large organizations and there are small organizations, right? And I'd much rather work for a small organization. The culture is hands down better. Large companies, well, I'll spare you the lecture, but it works differently. And one of the things that we see at large organizations is people shy away from making decisions because anybody who makes a call on something, they're absolutely paranoid about being blamed for it being the wrong call. That's kind of a staple of large enterprise corporate culture, right? So that includes hiring decisions. That's why sometimes they get like 8 people involved in which candidate are we going to select? Does it really take 8 people to determine which one of these people you should go with? Especially when it's a crapshoot and everybody knows it? No, it's just that they're trying to get out of a situation where they're going to get blamed if the candidate they select doesn't work out, right? So recruiters are no different. They say, okay, I want to involve the hiring manager, the hiring manager's boss. I want to bring in these 3 people from key areas to all sort of contribute to the discussion. So then if we end up choosing the wrong person, you can't blame me because all these people were in on it. And if it was a bad call, they all had the opportunity to say no, but they didn't. So it's not my fault, right? That's what drives a lot of rounds of interviews. And that's it's one big factor in that. And that's what drives a lot of panel interviews where you're interviewing with like multiple people, Anything beyond the recruiter and the hiring manager is unnecessary. It really is. It signals issues to do with their organizational culture. Either that manager isn't trusted, by their boss, so the boss has to be involved in even the hiring decisions, et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of issues. I mean, I did a video years ago where I talked about a job I did get, like back in the day. I did 9 interviews for it. Or put it this way, I was called back 9 times, like to go physically to the company. 9 times, and I eventually did get it. But yeah, and surprise, surprise, that company that I ended up working for had major organizational issues. It wasn't a coincidence. Maddie says, wouldn't that count as a lack of self-awareness? What? Are you talking about what were we talking about? Like was it a weakness question or something? Sure, yeah. If that's the way you look at it, sure. I've gotten that. I've also gotten, well, what about honesty? Isn't honesty a good thing? Of course it is. Now, I can tell you're not a salesperson because if you think the best way to make a good impression is to show up and to give a laundry list of all the things you've ever done wrong and all the ways you failed in the past, if you think that that's a good way to make somebody want, like, to be interested in you long enough to take a good look at you to see your strengths, all I can say is go out and try it. And tell me how it goes. What you're doing is okay, now the sun is coming out. My camera's getting bright. I'll just dial that back. right? Yeah, you're absolutely right. These are real traits that are very, very important, you know? Obviously, you need to have self-awareness. But if you go down and they say, hi, you know, okay, now you're up. Why do you think you would be good for this job? Tell me about yourself. And you say, well, listen, in the interest of honesty, you should know that I hate this kind of work. And I'm not a morning person. So don't try and give me stuff in the morning. Oh, also, you know who really pisses me off? These people, you know? I hate them. I can't stand them. You know? So I really, really hope that there's no people like that in this company, you know? Like, if you think that that's a good way to sell yourself and for them to pick you, go out and try it and see what the results are. You know, full marks for honesty, you know, full marks for like putting disclaimers on things and saying, listen, this is who I am. And if we're going to get along, you need to know this up front, right? But how effective is that in this situation when you're competing against several other people, all for one job? You know, the idea is that there's plenty of time later to disclose that stuff appropriately, professionally, at the right moment, in the right way, to the right people. There's plenty of time to do that later. But you will not get a chance to do that later if they say, okay, so here's who's moving forward, you, and I'm sorry, you have to go home. They didn't look at you long enough for you to have a chance to say all that stuff. You know what I mean? You know? So hopefully, I think most people get this. But sometimes you get technical people, sometimes introverted people like myself, that we don't really see their side of it. We don't realize that's what's going on. We pride ourselves in being honest for the virtue it is, but we may not have the experience where we've realized that, you know, that may not come in your first conversation when you're trying to make a good impression. Luciano is here. Says, I had a pre-interview 2 weeks ago, but I was rejected. Today, the recruiting company posted the same job again on LinkedIn. Should I apply again or would it be in vain? Never say never. You know what I mean? Like, everything happens some of the time. But there's much more promising things you could do instead, Luciano. Okay? Chances are, if they passed on you once, they'll probably pass on you again because there's just either a disconnect there or they just don't see your value. Okay? Now, that sounds very negative, but you know what? What you need to do is pursue other opportunities, go to other people who do see your value. They're the ones that are going to hire you. Okay? You know what I mean? And if you are going to apply again for this, you wouldn't do it in the same way, right? Like instead of like sending in some application or something, go talk to the person, you know, go talk to the hiring manager. That's the only time I would say like, okay, that's a good idea, you know, if you're going to them again. Okay, keep moving, Luciano. You're awesome. You got a lot of value. These people are morons. They don't see it. Their way of assessing you doesn't surface it. So keep moving. Go to apply for things where they do appreciate you and they do see what you have and they recognize it as being awesome, which it is. Okay? Maddie says, what's the one skill you recommend learning right now to boost hireability? Very simple, likability. Okay? You go in there, you have a rapport with people. When the interview is over, they think, wow, that was fun. I enjoyed that. And I'm kind of sad it's over, right? That effect, that's what you want other people to have when they meet you. So learn how to get that. Learn all the little tricks, okay? Learn how to smile, how to be, pleasant, maybe some soft humor, that's organic. Learn how to turn an interrogation into more of a conversation, like, a two-way conversation that's kind of free-flowing. Learn how to compliment people when they do something that you appreciate. We're not talking about being ingratiating and being slimy. That's not what I'm saying. But when they do something for you that you honestly appreciate, learn how to go back to them and say, hey, listen, I really appreciate you doing this for me. A lot of places, they don't do that, and the fact that you guys do really says something. So, that was very helpful for me. So way to go. Something like that, right? How many times do you get that every day? I'm sure you do nice little things for people like on a regular basis, like they come in and you say, here, would you like to borrow this chair? Like, you want to sit here? Something like that. Just like a little gesture, right? That's very nice of you, very chivalrous, very, polite. How often does someone say, hey, thanks very much. I really appreciate, how accommodating you're being. That's great to see. Way to go. How do you feel when someone does that to you? It's not slimy because it's completely 100% genuine. You did something nice. They genuinely appreciate it. Tell them. That's what the kind of things that make people love you. They want you around. They want to work for you. They want to work with you. They want to hire you. Imagine if that could be the person you work with every day. You know what I'm saying? So learn about likability. Learn about like how to get people to instantly like you based on genuine things, little things like this. It's really not hard. I don't care how introverted you are. I don't care how, socially isolated you might be. Learn some of these little things, and that way when you interact with people, like in a job interview, a lot of times they go away thinking like, wow, that person was awesome, Digital Dream Disc. Well, okay, yeah, great. Now we're getting the questions flooding in. I have to sign off in like a couple minutes. But I'm coming back in like 10 minutes. So, because I have another live stream scheduled in 13 minutes. So I have to quit here. Digital Dream Disc. When they ask what time to do the interview, is it always best to choose the latest time possible? I don't know. That's one school of thought. That would be a question we could ask ChatGPT, and I encourage you to do it. I don't think it matters that much. Like, I think the latest time would be good, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's the biggest factor by far. It Begins is here. It says, true. Thank you, It Begins, and thank you for being a member. Luciano says, okay, thanks for the advice. You're absolutely welcome. And same to Maddie. You guys rock, both of you. Matty says, thanks for you're absolutely welcome too, Matt. You're awesome. Joshua says, a recruiter gave me her email address at a virtual interview to email her if I haven't heard back from her by July. Should I email her since we were in early days in August? Should I give it some time? Look, you can respond if you want, or if you don't want, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like saying, I'll email you sometime if I have the time, but if I don't, I don't know, follow up. Does that look like they're really interested? Because that's the equivalent of what they're doing here. I hate to say it, Joshua. Joshua, you are awesome. You are highly employable. You're highly valuable, but that's like a version of a professional kiss-off. If they were excited about you, if they wanted to hire you, they would contact you. It's that simple, okay? So listen, if they've said this, what I would do is I would just email them. I'd follow up like whatever now, or whenever they said to do it, I just follow up with them once. If it's like a job that you really, really want, it's like a dream job, maybe follow up twice and then get on with your life. Keep moving forward, Your next opportunity is out there. Out there right now, there's someone who's looking for someone like you, and they see your value and they think what you do is awesome, okay? So it doesn't sound like that's these people, So do this if you want, and then keep moving to find that perfect match, okay? They're out there right now, and they're looking for you. So stop wasting time with people like this and get there. Luciano Pohl, like recruiters have like long vacations in the summer, right? They're not teachers, They have maybe like 5 days off in the year if they're in the US, you know. If they're anywhere else, they maybe got 2 or 3 weeks, but that's it. You know, saying I'm going away, you know, email me this month when I'm back. It's like, screw off. There's always exceptions, but that's the rule. Oh, there's no way I can like answer all of these before I got to quit in like a minute. 2 weeks ago was rejected. The recruiter posted the same company on LinkedIn. Should I apply again? I did that one. What's the one skill you recommend learning right now to boost hireability? I answered that. When they ask you to do an interview, what's the best time to choose? I already did that. This has moved. This keeps moving around. Oh, yeah, it shifted downwards. What the hell is that? True. Okay, so I answered that one. A recruiter gave me your email address. Crypto, airdrops, and free money tutorials, okay? I had a cold call Tuesday with the director of a construction company. He asked me, why should we hire you? He didn't want the technical BS that everyone can do. He told me to be unique. How? Yeah, what? Because construction is unique, right? Like, yeah, all those like extremely artistically unique construction workers we've all heard about and love. Yeah. No, it just sounds like some pansy that like doesn't know what they're doing and they're arrogant and they overinflate their own importance. Now, when you say BS that people say, like, what do you mean? They're asking you, why should we hire you? That means, why should we pick you over the other applicants? Why should we forget them and hire you? It's a perfectly legitimate question. The answer is similarly legitimate. It might be boring, but it's legitimate. Hey, I'm a framer, I'm a roofer. I do this amount of shingles per hour. Enough said. Oh, it's also well done. You know? Nobody does that. Everyone does like, I don't know, 500 shingles an hour. I do 800, and it's all done properly. That's why you should hire me. Right? Pretty simple. Now, is that original? You know, if the only thing I would say that would be original to like, you know, this director of construction would be a combination of skills. You know, it's like, well, I'm a fully qualified framer. I've got my journeyman framing ticket. Okay, so, you know, I can do any kind of framing you want. And plus, I do 800 shingles an hour as a roofer. That's why you should hire me. There you go. How many people have you talked to today that have that combination? None? Okay, there you go. Right? Give me a break. Director of construction, you know? No offense, but like, you know, that's not what construction is about, being original. Anyway. You're awesome, crypto. You're going to be able, like, you know your stuff. You've got value, right? You just need to be able to articulate what you do. And so people say, okay, hey, yeah, that's pretty solid. You know, we could use you. That plus you're great to work with. How about that? How many people on a construction site are a pleasure to deal with? You need something done? You talk to me? It's not a bad experience. I was a supervisor of tradespeople for years and years. It's like, it's always nice having some guys that like are people that like, you know, you ask them to do something. It's a little bit out of the job, you know, briefing for the day. It's like they're, hey, not a problem. Happy to help. You know, that's kind of rare and that's kind of really awesome, you know. Maddie says, what do they want to know if asked, what are your accomplishments? Well, they probably want to know your accomplishments. We'll get into that in the next live stream, which I have to sign off now. Thanks everybody for being here. Check out this course. Okay. You want to go deeper with me? You want to get hired? You want to learn how the hidden job market works and how you can get awesome jobs? Check out that course. There's a link in the description under this video for the course and also for a video that talks about what you get in the course and how it works. So check that out. I'll be back in like 5 minutes on this channel with a different live stream, Honest HR Nitrous. Hope to see you there. Thanks very much. Take care.